Marcus wiped the grease from his hands with a dirty rag, staring at the broken hyperdrive engine that lay scattered across his workbench. 3 months. 3 months since the Galactic Council had stripped him of his engineering license, banned him from working on any ship larger than a personal transport. All because he had dared to suggest that human engineering methods might be superior to the approved Zephyrian techniques. The workshop on Kepler Station was small, cramped and reeked of coolant fluid and disappointment. Most days Marcus barely scraped together enough credits to keep the lights on. The only customers who came to him now were desperate traders with ancient ships that nobody else would touch, or criminals who needed their vessel's registration code scrambled. Today had been particularly brutal. A Nixari merchant had brought in a cargo hauler with a failing power coupling, taken one look at Marcus's human hands, and walked out without a word. The prejudice still stung even after all these months. In the galactic community, humans were seen as crude, violent, and technologically backward. Never mind that human ships had the lowest failure rates in the galaxy, or that human-designed safety protocols had saved countless lives. Marcus kicked an empty fuel canister across the floor and slumped into his chair. The bottle of synthetic whiskey on his desk looked more appealing by the hour. He had maybe 2 days of food left, and the station's rent collector would be back soon. Maybe it was time to admit defeat and sign up for one of those corporate mining operations in the Outer Rim. At least there, nobody cared what species you were as long as you could swing a plasma torch. The workshop's door chimed, indicating someone had entered. Marcus didn't bother looking up. Probably another customer who would leave the moment they saw him. "We're closed," he muttered, not bothering to hide the exhaustion in his voice. But instead of footsteps retreating, he heard something else. A soft, keening cry that made his chest tighten. It sounded like distress. Real distress. Marcus lifted his head and froze. Standing in his doorway was a Veltar, one of the galaxy's most reclusive species. The alien was tall and willowy, with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the workshop's harsh lighting. But what caught Marcus's attention wasn't the adult Veltar. It was what the alien was carrying. Cradled in the Veltar's forearms was a small creature, no bigger than a human infant. It had the same blue-tinged skin as its parent, but it was covered in a fine, downy fur that rippled with each labored breath. The little one's large, dark eyes were filled with pain, and it made that same heartbreaking cry that had drawn Marcus's attention. "Please," the Veltar said in heavily accented galactic standard. "My ship?" "My ship is broken. My child is dying." Marcus stood slowly, his engineer's mind immediately switching gears. "What's wrong with your ship?" "The life support," the Veltar replied, its voice cracking with emotion. "The atmospheric processor failed 3 days ago. We have been running on emergency reserves, but—" The alien gestured helplessly at the small creature in its arms. "Veltar young cannot survive without our native atmospheric composition. The oxygen levels are too high, the trace gas is too low. I tried to reach other mechanics, but they all said the same thing, that my ship is too old, too alien." They cannot help. Marcus felt a familiar anger rising in his chest. The same dismissive attitude that had cost him his license, that had driven him to this forgotten corner of space. But as he looked at the suffering hatchling, his anger transformed into something else. Determination. "Let me take a look," he said, grabbing his toolkit. The Veltar's eyes widened in surprise. You will help? But you are human." "Yeah, well, being human might actually be useful for once," Marcus replied grimly. "We're stubborn like that." The Veltar ship was indeed ancient by galactic standards, probably a century old at least. It was beautiful in its own way, with flowing, organic lines that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. But as Marcus examined the life support systems, he could see why the other mechanics had turned the alien away. The atmospheric processor was a marvel of biotechnology, grown rather than built. Its organic components were unlike anything in standard galactic engineering textbooks. The system was designed to perfectly replicate the atmosphere of the Veltar homeworld, with precise balances of gases that most species couldn't even pronounce. But Marcus didn't need to understand the theory. He just needed to understand the problem. "The bioneural pathways are degrading," he explained to the Veltar, who had introduced himself as Kethvar. "See these darkened sections? They're dying, probably from stress fractures in the substrate matrix." Kethvar nodded sadly. "This is what the other mechanics told me." They said the only solution was to replace the entire system, but such components are only available on the Veltar homeworld. The journey would take months, and he looked down at his child, whose breathing had become even more labored. "What if we didn't replace it?" Marcus asked suddenly. "What do you mean?" "What if we bypassed the damaged sections and rerouted the processing through healthy tissue?" Marcus was already moving, his hands tracing the organic pathways. Humans, we're good at jury-rigging things, making broken systems work with whatever we have on hand. For the next 6 hours, Marcus worked like a man possessed. He carefully grafted new pathways using biocompatible tubing from his emergency kit, creating bypass routes around the damaged areas. It wasn't pretty, and it certainly wasn't by the book, but it worked. When the atmospheric processor hummed back to life, filling the ship with the precise mixture of gases the Veltar needed, Kethvar wept openly. The change in his child was immediate. Its breathing eased, its color improved, and for the first time in days it stopped crying. "How much do I owe you?" Kethvar asked, reaching for his credit pad. Marcus shook his head. "Nothing, just when you get back to Veltar space, remember that a human helped you. Maybe tell some other people." Kethvar stared at him for a long moment, then carefully shifted his child to one arm and placed one of his free hands on Marcus's shoulder. "I will not forget this kindness, and neither will my people." As the Veltar ship departed, Marcus watched from his workshop window until it disappeared among the stars. For the first time in months, he felt something other than despair. Maybe there was still hope for a human mechanic in this galaxy after all. 2 weeks passed before Marcus saw another customer. He had almost convinced himself that the encounter with Kethvar had been some kind of fever dream, brought on by too much synthetic whiskey and too little food. But then, the workshop door chimed again, and this time it was a Gorvani trader with a fusion reactor that kept threatening to go critical. The Gorvani were a proud, warlike species known for their military prowess and their suspicion of outsiders. This one was no different. He strutted into the workshop with the swagger of someone used to being feared, his chitinous exoskeleton gleaming under the lights. "You are the human who fixed Kethvar's ship," the Gorvani stated rather than asked, his voice a low rumble that seemed to come from deep within his chest. Marcus blinked in surprise. "You know Kethvar?" "All traders know each other eventually," the Gorvani replied. "I am Vexthal. My ship needs repair, and Kethvar said you could fix anything, even things that cannot be fixed." The Gorvani's ship was a military surplus vessel, heavily armed and armored. The fusion reactor was indeed on the verge of critical failure, its containment fields fluctuating wildly. Any sane engineer would have recommended a complete overhaul at a certified facility. "This is going to take some creative thinking," Marcus muttered, studying the readouts. "That is why I came to you," Vexthal replied. Kethvar said humans think differently. Marcus spent the next 3 days elbow-deep in the reactor core, jury-rigging a solution that would have made his old professors weep. He bypassed 3 separate safety systems, rerouted power through auxiliary conduits, and created a manual override system using spare parts from 6 different manufacturers. When he fired up the reactor, it purged beautifully, running smoother than it had in years. Vexthal paid him triple the normal rate and left behind something even more valuable: word-of-mouth advertising. Within days, Marcus's workshop had a steady stream of customers, all of them mentioning that they had heard about the human who can fix anything. The jobs got progressively more challenging. A crystalline merchant needed her quantum drive realigned after it had been damaged by stellar radiation. A group of Nexari pirates needed their stealth systems repaired without alerting station security. Each problem seemed impossible at first, but Marcus found that his human intuition, that ability to see unconventional solutions, gave him an edge that traditional engineering couldn't match. But it was the Veltar who changed everything. Kethvar returned 3 months after their first meeting, but he wasn't alone. With him came a delegation of Veltar engineers, scientists, and merchants. They filled Marcus's small workshop, their ethereal forms making the cramped space seem almost magical. "We have come with a proposition," Kethvar announced formally. "The Veltar Collective would like to offer you exclusive contracts for maintenance of our vessels in this sector." Marcus nearly choked on his coffee. "Exclusive contracts? But I'm just one human with a workshop that's falling apart. That can be remedied. Another Veltar stepped forward, her voice like silver bells. I am Silwyn, chief engineer of the collective. We have studied the repairs you made to Kethvar's ship. Your methodology is unconventional, but highly effective. More importantly, you approach problems with empathy, not just technical knowledge. Silwyn gestured to a datapad she carried. These are the specifications for a new workshop we would like to build for you. Larger, better equipped, staffed with assistants if you desire. In exchange, you would serve as the primary maintenance facility for Veltar vessels passing through this sector. Marcus stared at the blueprints on the datapad. The proposed workshop was enormous, with specialized bays for different types of repairs, advanced diagnostic equipment, and quarters for a full staff. It was more than he had ever dreamed of, even back when he had held his engineering license. Why? He asked simply. Why me? Kethvar stepped forward, his child now healthy and alert in his arms. Because you saved my son's life without expecting anything in return. Because you saw a problem that needed solving and solved it, regardless of species or politics. And because. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Because humans have something the rest of the galaxy has forgotten. What's that? Hope? Silwyn answered. You look at broken things and see how they can be fixed. You look at impossible problems and find possible solutions. The galaxy needs more of that kind of thinking. Marcus felt something shift inside him, a warmth he hadn't experienced since his disgrace. What about the Galactic Council? They'll try to shut me down again. Let them try. Vexthal's voice rumbled from the back of the group. The Gorvani warrior had apparently stayed to witness the meeting. The Veltar Collective has significant influence in the Council, and I speak for the Gorvani Trade Alliance when I say we will support this venture. The Nexari Confederacy has also expressed interest, added a new voice from the workshop entrance. A sleek Nexari female glided in, her scaled skin reflecting the lights like oil on water. I am Ambassador Reshki. We have heard of your unconventional methods. They intrigue us. Marcus looked around at the collection of aliens filling his workshop. Just months ago, he had been a pariah, rejected by his own species and dismissed by the galactic community. Now he was being offered the chance to become something greater than he had ever imagined. But there was a catch. There always was. What's the real reason? Marcus asked, his engineer's mind sensing the underlying complexity. This isn't just about ship repairs. You could hire a dozen certified engineers for what this is going to cost. Silwyn and Kethvar exchanged glances, a moment of silent communication passing between them. There is a larger issue, Silwyn admitted. The galaxy is changing, Marcus. New threats are emerging from the void between the galactic arms. Unknown technologies, hostile species that think nothing like us. The old ways of doing things, the rigid adherence to approved methods and technologies, may not be sufficient. We need innovators, Kethvar continued. We need beings who can look at the impossible and make it possible. Humans have that gift, but they are rarely given the chance to use it on a galactic scale. You want me to be a test case, Marcus realized, to prove that human engineering has value beyond what the Council recognizes. In part, yes, Ambassador Reshki confirmed, but also because you have already proven yourself. Every ship you have repaired has performed beyond specifications. Every impossible fix you have made has held under stress conditions that should have destroyed it. You are not just competent, Marcus Chen. You may be exceptional. Marcus walked to his window, looking out at the stars that had once seemed so hostile. Now they looked like possibilities, like chances waiting to be taken. He turned back to the assembled aliens, decision made. When do we start? The new workshop took shape over the following months like something from Marcus's wildest dreams. The Veltar engineers worked alongside human construction crews, creating a facility that blended the best of both approaches to technology. Organic biosystems interfaced seamlessly with human-designed mechanical components, while vast workbays accommodated vessels from across the galactic spectrum. Marcus found himself at the center of it all, consulting on everything from the placement of quantum lifts to the design of specialized atmospheric chambers for species with unique environmental needs. For the first time in his life, His human perspective wasn't seen as a limitation but as an asset. The workshop's grand opening drew representatives from dozens of species. The Galactic Council had initially tried to block the facility's certification, but the combined political pressure from the Veltar Collective, Gorvani Trade Alliance, and Nexari Confederacy had forced them to back down. Still, Marcus could feel their disapproval like a cold wind whenever council inspectors visited. Business was booming. Word had spread throughout the sector about the human mechanic who could repair anything, and Marcus found himself working on technologies he had only read about in theoretical journals. Catherian crystal drives, Zephyrian biohulls, even an ancient predecessor, artifact that nobody else dared to touch. It was during the repair of that predecessor artifact that Marcus first encountered something truly disturbing. The artifact belonged to Dr. Yilnith, a renowned Veltar xenoarchaeologist who specialized in studying the mysterious race that had vanished from the galaxy millions of years ago. The device was clearly some kind of communications array, its crystalline structure pulsing with energy patterns that defied modern understanding. It was found in the ruins on Keftar 7th, Dr. Yilnith explained as Marcus examined the artifact. We believe it may have been a long-range communication device, capable of transmitting messages across galactic distances instantaneously. Marcus ran his scanner over the crystal matrix, frowning at the readings. The energy patterns are unlike anything I've seen. They're not following normal wave propagation rules. That's exactly the problem, Dr. Yilnith said. 3 days ago, the device activated on its own. It ran for approximately 6 hours, transmitting something into deep space. Our attempts to analyze the transmission have been unsuccessful, but what? Dr. Yilnith's expression grew troubled. But the transmission vector was aimed toward the galactic void, the empty space between galaxy arms, and yesterday we detected an answering signal. A chill ran down Marcus's spine. An answer from what? We don't know, but whatever responded is moving toward our galaxy at incredible speed. The signal indicates massive objects, possibly ships, approaching from deep void space. They'll reach the outer rim systems within weeks. Marcus studied the artifact more carefully, his engineer's intuition telling him something was terribly wrong. The crystal structure showed signs of recent modification, as if something had been added or changed. Dr. Yilnith, this device, it's been tampered with. See these microfractures? They're not from age or damage. Someone deliberately altered the transmission array. The xenoarchaeologist leaned closer, her large eyes reflecting the artifact's pulsing light. That's impossible. The device has been in our custody since its discovery. Only authorized researchers have had access. Then one of your authorized researchers isn't who you think they are, Marcus said grimly. Before Dr. Yilnith could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the workshop. Marcus's communication console lit up with urgent priority signals from Kepler Station's command center. All vessels, this is Station Command, came the panicked voice of the duty officer. We are detecting massive energy signatures approaching the system. Unknown vessels of enormous size, configuration unknown. All civilian traffic is ordered to maintain current position and prepare for possible evacuation. Marcus and Dr. Yilnith rushed to the workshop's observation deck, where a crowd of his staff and customers had gathered. Through the massive viewports, they could see space itself seeming to ripple and bend. Then, with a flash of brilliant light that made everyone shield their eyes, they appeared. The ships were impossibly vast, each one larger than a space station. Their design was like nothing in the galactic databases, all flowing curves and organic shapes that seemed to shift and change even as they watched. But what struck Marcus most was their color, a deep, unsettling black that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. By the ancestors, Dr. Yilnith whispered. Those aren't predecessor ships. No, Marcus agreed, his engineer's eye analyzing their construction. But they're using predecessor technology. See those energy patterns? They match what's coming from your artifact. As if responding to his words, the artifact in the workshop below began pulsing more rapidly, its light growing brighter. The alien ships seemed to pulse in unison, their dark hulls flickering with the same crystalline patterns. They're using predecessor communication arrays as beacons, Marcus realized. Someone has been calling them here. Station Command's voice crackled over the comm again, tinged with barely controlled terror. Unknown vessels are launching smaller craft. Repeat, unknown vessels are deploying what appear to be boarding pods. All stations and ships are to prepare for potential hostile contact. Marcus's mind raced. The workshop was filled with representatives from a dozen species, each with their own ships and technologies. If these unknown aliens were hostile, this facility would be a prime target. Dr. Yilneth, can you shut down the artifact? I don't know. The activation sequences are beyond our understanding. Then we need to try something else. Marcus turned to address the crowd on the observation deck. Everyone listen to me. I don't know what those things are, but they're responding to predecessor technology. That means they're probably very old, very advanced, and very dangerous. Vexthal stepped forward, his hand already reaching for the plasma rifle slung across his back. What do you propose, human? We evacuate everyone we can, but we don't run blind. We need to understand what we're dealing with. Marcus gestured toward the alien ships. My workshop has the most advanced sensor arrays in the sector. We can gather data on their technology, their capabilities. That information could save lives. Ambassador Reshki's scaled features twisted into what might have been a smile. You want to study them while they're attacking? That is either brilliantly tactical or brilliantly insane. With humans, it's often both, Kithvar observed, cradling his now-grown child protectively. The first of the alien boarding pods struck Kepler Station's outer hull with a sound that reverberated through the entire structure. Emergency lights bathed everything in red as the station's defensive systems activated. So what's it going to be? Marcus asked the assembled aliens. Run and hope for the best or stay and fight for answers? Silwyn was the first to speak, her melodious voice cutting through the chaos. The Veltar Collective has invested considerable resources in this facility and in you. Marcus Chen, we do not abandon our investments lightly. The Gorvani have never retreated from a worthy battle, Vexthal growled, chambering around in his rifle. And the Nixari are curious by nature, Ambassador Reshki added smoothly. Besides, where else can we go? These ships appeared to emerge from hyperspace without warning. If they have that capability, nowhere in the galaxy is truly safe. Marcus nodded, feeling that familiar mix of terror and determination that had driven him to fix impossible things. Then let's get to work. Dr. Yilneth, I need everything you know about predecessor technology. Silwyn, can your bioscanners penetrate those hulls? Vexthal, how good are Gorvani weapons against unknown armor? As the alien invasion of Kepler Station began in earnest, Marcus Chen found himself at the center of humanity's first contact with an enemy that had been sleeping between the stars for millions of years. And for the first time since losing his engineering license, he felt truly alive. The workshop transformed into a war room within minutes. Marcus's advanced diagnostic equipment was repurposed to scan the alien vessels, while his multi-species staff worked frantically to analyze the incoming data. Through the viewports, they could see Kepler Station's defense platforms engaging the smaller alien craft. Bright flashes of weapons fire illuminating the battle. The hull composition is unlike anything in our databases, Silwyn reported, her biosensors working overtime to penetrate the alien ship's defenses. It appears to be some form of living metal, possibly self-repairing. Weapons are having minimal effect, Vexthal added grimly, watching the tactical displays. Station defenses are reporting that their plasma cannons are being absorbed rather than causing damage. Marcus studied the energy readings from Dr. Yilneth's artifact, which continued to pulse in sync with the alien ships. They're not just using predecessor technology, they're integrated with it. Look at these patterns. The ship's hulls are responding to the same quantum frequencies as the communication array. Dr. Yilneth worked frantically at her portable research station, comparing the artifact's readings with her vast database of predecessor ruins. Marcus, I think I've found something. These frequency patterns, they match records from the Keftar 7 site, but not from the ruins we explored. What do you mean? The ruins we excavated were surface structures, clearly meant for habitation and research. But the deep scanner readings showed vast complexes buried far beneath, sealed away and protected. We assumed they were storage areas or sacred sites. She looked up, her large eyes wide with realization. But what if they were prisons? The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. You think the predecessors imprisoned these aliens? It would explain everything, Dr. Yilneth said urgently. The communication arrays weren't for normal transmission. They were for maintaining containment fields across galactic distances. The artifacts we've been finding and studying, they weren't tools or records. They were locks. Ambassador Reshki hissed softly, her scaled skin shifting color to reflect her agitation. And by activating them, we've been opening the cells. A new alarm pierced the air as one of the alien boarding pods breached the workshop's outer hull. Through the internal security feeds, they could see shapes moving in the corridors. Tall, elongated figures that seemed to flow rather than walk, their forms shifting between solid and liquid states. Security barriers are holding for now, Marcus reported, monitoring the containment systems. But they're not attacking the barriers directly. They're studying them. Vexthal checked his weapon and moved toward the corridor entrance. Then let me give them something more direct to study. Wait, Marcus called out. If these things have been imprisoned for millions of years, they might not even understand what we are. For all we know, they think we're predecessors. You want to talk to them? Ambassador Reshki asked incredulously. I want to understand them, Marcus replied. Vexthal, keep your weapon ready, but don't fire unless they attack first. Everyone else, keep working on those scans. If these things are as old as we think they are, we need every advantage we can get. The first alien appeared at the blast door separating the workshop from the main corridor. It was tall and graceful, its form seeming to shift between states of matter as they watched.
What might have been a face turned toward them?
Though Marcus couldn't make out distinct features. When it spoke, the voice came from everywhere at once, resonating through the walls themselves rather than through air. Keepers, the alien said, the word carrying undertones of rage and ancient pain. The locks are broken. The long silence is ended. Marcus stepped forward slowly, his hands visible and empty. We're not keepers. We're explorers, researchers. We found the artifacts and activated them by accident. The alien's form solidified slightly, revealing features that were somehow both beautiful and terrifying. Not keepers, but you use their tools, speak with their voices through the quantum foam. We found the artifacts in ruins, Dr. Yilneth interjected, her scientist's curiosity overriding her fear. The keepers, the predecessors, they've been gone for millions of years. The alien's reaction was immediate and violent. The walls around them began to vibrate, and the lights flickered as some form of energy discharge coursed through the station's systems. Gone? The voice thundered. They cannot be gone. The locks remain. The barriers hold. They must answer for their crimes. Marcus felt the workshop shuddering around them and realized that this single alien's emotional state was affecting the station's infrastructure. What crimes? What did the predecessors do to you? The alien turned its attention fully to Marcus, and he felt a pressure in his mind like a vast presence trying to understand him. They stole our children, harvested our worlds, made of us weapons against our own kind. When we refused to serve, they sealed us in the deep dark between thoughts and dreams. The communication was becoming clearer as the aliens seemed to learn their languages in real time. You are young species, small, but you taste of curiosity, not cruelty. Why do you free us if you do not serve the keepers? Because we didn't know, Marcus said honestly. We found the artifacts and thought they were communication devices. We activated them to study them, not to free anyone. And now that we know, Silwyn added carefully, we want to help. If the predecessors wronged you, we don't have to perpetuate that wrong. The alien's form shifted again, becoming more solid and defined. Marcus could now see that it was wearing some form of armor that seemed to be alive, responding to its wearer's emotions and needs. Help? You would help the devourers, the endless hunger, the terror from the void? I would help anyone who's been unjustly imprisoned, Marcus replied. But I need to understand. You say the predecessors made you into weapons. Weapons against whom? The alien gestured toward the viewports where the battle continued to rage. Against each other. Against the younger races who would not submit. We were transformed, made hungry for energy, for life itself. The Keepers thought they could control us, use us to maintain their empire across the galaxy. Marcus began to understand the scope of the tragedy. But you fought back. Some did. Others embraced what they had been made into. The galaxy burned for 1,000 years before the Keepers finally managed to contain us all. The alien's voice carried infinite sadness. We have been screaming in the dark ever since, dreaming of revenge. But revenge against who? Dr. Yilneth asked. The predecessors are extinct, have been for millions of years. Then why do the locks still function? Why do the barriers still hold most of our people in the deep places? The alien gestured around them. Your species, all of you use Keeper technology. You follow keeper patterns, you spread through the galaxy as they did. How are you different? Marcus felt the weight of the alien's question. How are they different? Humanity and the other galactic species had indeed spread through the galaxy, often displacing or absorbing smaller civilizations. They used predecessor ruins as bases, studied their technology, followed their trade routes. But there was a difference. There had to be. We choose, Marcus said finally. We choose whether to help or to harm. We choose whether to enslave or to liberate. Right now I'm choosing to try to find a solution that doesn't end with everyone dead. The alien studied him for a long moment. You would free our people? All of them? Even knowing what some have become? Marcus looked around at his multi-species staff, at the weapons aimed but not fired, at the research continuing even in the face of potential annihilation. I would try to find a way to free them without destroying everyone else in the process, he said. But I need your help to do it. I need to understand the lock mechanisms, the containment systems. I need to know how to release your people safely. And if it cannot be done safely, Marcus met the alien's gaze directly. Then we'll find another way. That's what humans do. We look at impossible problems and make them possible. For the first time, something like hope flickered in the alien's presence. Perhaps the young races are different from the keepers after all. The alien, who introduced itself as Zefkiel of the Eternal Tide, proved to be a valuable source of information about the predecessor containment systems. As the battle raged around Kepler Station, Marcus found himself working alongside a being that most of the galaxy would consider a nightmare from the void. The primary containment nodes are located throughout the galaxy, Zefkiel explained, its form shifting between solid and energy as it interfaced directly with Marcus's diagnostic equipment. Each one maintains locks on thousands of our people, but the system is failing. That is why some of us have been awakening. Marcus studied the data flowing across his screens. The containment network was vast and incredibly sophisticated, using quantum entanglement to maintain prison fields across galactic distances. If the system is failing naturally, why not just wait for your people to be released gradually? Zefkiel's presence radiated pain, because those who wake first are often those who are most changed by the keepers. They wake hungry, mad with rage and isolation. They consume whatever they find. It gestured toward the battle outside. Those who attacked your station are the lost ones. They have forgotten what we were before the keepers transformed us. And you're different because I chose to remember. We few who maintained our sanity did so by focusing on who we had been, not what we were made into. But we are a small fraction of those who remain imprisoned. Dr. Yilnith looked up from her analysis of the predecessor artifact. Zefkiel, if we could modify the containment fields to release your people gradually, to wake them slowly rather than all at once, would that help them retain their sanity? Perhaps, but such modifications would require access to the primary control nodes, and those are located in the most dangerous places in the galaxy where the keepers made their final stands against us. Silwyn's biosensors had been working overtime to understand Zefkiel's physiology. Marcus, I'm reading incredible energy patterns from our guest. They appear to feed on quantum fluctuations, stellar radiation, even the background energy of space itself. No wonder the predecessors weaponized them. But we also create, Zefkiel said, responding to their curiosity. Before the keepers found us, we were builders of worlds, shapers of space itself. We could heal damaged planets, create new star systems. The hunger is not natural to us, it is what they made us. Marcus's engineer's mind began working on the problem from multiple angles. What if we didn't just release your people gradually? What if we could reverse the process? Undo what the predecessors did to you? Zefkiel's form solidified in surprise. That is impossible. The changes are genetic, quantum-level alterations that followed specific patterns, Marcus interrupted, pulling up the energy readings. Look at this. The transformation protocols are still active in your bioenergy matrix. They're like a virus, constantly rewriting your quantum signature. But viruses can be cured, Ambassador Reschke hissed softly. You're proposing to cure beings that have been genetically modified on a quantum level? The computational power alone would require distributed processing across multiple advanced civilizations. Silwyn finished, her eyes brightening with understanding. The Veltar biocomputers linked with Nexari quantum processors and human intuitive algorithms. Vexthal lowered his weapon slightly, his warrior's pragmatism overriding his caution. This cure, it would work on all of them, even the lost ones attacking the station? Marcus looked at the tactical displays showing the ongoing battle. The alien ships had stopped advancing and were holding position, as if waiting for something. Zefkil, can you communicate with them? Tell them what we're proposing? I can try, but the lost ones may not listen. They have been mad for so long that rational thought is difficult for them. Zefkil's form began to phase in and out of visible existence as it reached out, through quantum fields to contact the attacking ships. The effect was immediate. The weapons fire stopped and an eerie silence fell over the station. When Zefkil resolidified, its presence radiated exhaustion. They will listen, but only briefly. The hunger drives them constantly. If we cannot provide them with a solution soon, they will resume their attack. How much time do we have? Marcus asked. Hours, perhaps less. Marcus turned to his diverse team of aliens, each representing different aspects of galactic civilization. All right, people, we've got hours to solve a problem that's been building for millions of years. Dr. Yilneth, I need every piece of data you have on predecessor genetic manipulation techniques. Silwyn, start working on biocomputational models for reversing quantum-level genetic changes. Ambassador Reshki, we're going to need Nexari processing power and probably political backing from the Confederacy. Vextal, start calculating what kind of resources we'll need to implement this galaxy-wide. And you? Silwyn asked. I'm going to do what humans do best, Marcus replied, rolling up his sleeves. I'm going to figure out how to jury-rig a solution that shouldn't work, but does anyway. The next few hours were a blur of intense collaboration. Marcus found himself at the center of an unprecedented alliance, as representatives from multiple species worked together to solve a problem that threatened the entire galaxy. The Veltar contributed their bioengineering expertise. The Nexari provided quantum computational resources, and the Gorvani offered their practical knowledge of large-scale logistics. But it was Zefkil who provided the crucial insight. The transformation process required anchoring points, it explained as Marcus worked through the reversal algorithms, specific quantum frequencies that locked the changes in place. If those frequencies could be disrupted simultaneously across all containment sites, the artificial genetic patterns would collapse, Marcus finished, his excitement growing. But that would require precise timing across galactic distances. We'd need to synchronize the signal using the same communication network the predecessors used to maintain the containments. Dr. Yilneth breathed. The artifacts aren't just keys, they're also signal repeaters. Marcus grinned, feeling that familiar rush of solving an impossible problem. Zefkil, how many of your people are still sane enough to help coordinate this? Perhaps a dozen across the galaxy. We have maintained contact through the quantum foam, waiting for hope. Then let's give them something to coordinate. Marcus turned to the others. We're going to need to modify every predecessor artifact in known space to transmit our reversal signal simultaneously. That means coordinating with archaeological teams, research institutions, and probably some very nervous government officials. Ambassador Reshki's scales shifted to a determined bronze color. The Nexari Confederacy can handle the political aspects. When we explain the alternative, invasion by mad energy beings, I suspect we'll find the galactic community quite cooperative. Silwyn was already working on biological simulation models. The reversal process will require tremendous energy. If we miscalculate, we could kill them instead of curing them. Which is why we test it first, Marcus said. Zefkil, would you be willing to be our test subject? The ancient being's form flickered with what might have been amusement. After 10 million years of imprisonment, human, I am willing to risk anything for the chance of freedom, as they prepared to attempt something that had never been tried before, the reversal of quantum-level genetic modifications across an entire species. Marcus reflected on how far he had come from being a disgraced mechanic in a failing workshop. Now he was trying to cure the nightmares of a vanished civilization. Just another day at the office, he supposed. The test run on Zefkil was scheduled for the following morning, but preparation required working through the night. Marcus's workshop had become the unlikely headquarters for one of the most ambitious undertakings in galactic history, with specialists arriving hourly from across known space. Dr. Yilneth had managed to contact 17 different archaeological sites containing predecessor artifacts, each agreeing to participate in the synchronized transmission. The Veltar Collective had provided biocomputational resources that boggled the mind, while the Nexari Confederacy had quietly reached out to Galactic Council members to prepare them for what was coming. The most surprising arrival was a delegation from Earth itself. Marcus had not spoken to another human in over 2 years, not since his disgrace and exile. When the Earth Alliance medical ship docked with the workshop, he felt a complex mix of emotions that he struggled to process. Dr. Sarah Chen, his sister, whom he hadn't seen since their father's funeral, led the human delegation. She had become one of Earth's foremost experts in xenobiology, specializing in species compatibility research. Behind her came a team of human engineers, doctors, and quantum physicists, all carrying expressions of skeptical hope. "Hello, Marcus," Sarah said simply as she entered the workshop. "Heard you were trying to cure an incurable alien plague. Thought you might need some help." The reunion was awkward at first, colored by years of separation and family disappointment. But as Sarah studied the data they had compiled, her scientific objectivity took over. "This is remarkable work," she admitted, reviewing the quantum genetic models. "The complexity of what the predecessors did. It's like they rewrote the fundamental laws of biology for an entire species. But your reversal algorithm..." She looked up at Marcus with something approaching respect. "How did you even conceive of this approach?" "Same way I fix everything else," Marcus replied with a shrug. "I look at what's broken and imagine what it would look like if it worked properly." Zefkil had been observing the human interaction with curiosity. "Your species dynamic is interesting," it commented. Siblings who are separated by conflict but united by necessity. "This is familiar. Your people had families?" Dr. Yilnith asked. "Before the transformation, yes. We lived in vast collective consciousness networks, sharing thoughts and experiences across star systems. The Keepers broke those connections when they modified us, isolating us from each other. It was perhaps the cruelest part of what they did, making us hungry for energy when what we truly starved for was connection." Sarah looked up from her medical scanner. "The quantum entanglement patterns in Zefkil's neural structure. They're not random degradation. They're actively maintained pathways, almost like the brain is constantly trying to reconnect with something that's no longer there. The collective network," Marcus realized. "That's why the reversal process might work. We're not just undoing genetic modifications. We're restoring their ability to connect with each other." Silwyn had been monitoring the biocomputational models as they ran millions of simulation cycles. "Marcus, we have a problem. The energy requirements for the reversal are within acceptable parameters, but the temporal synchronization is proving difficult. The communication delay across galactic distances means our signal timing will be off by several microseconds. How much of a problem is that? Potentially catastrophic. If the reversal signal hits the containment fields before it hits the genetic locks, we could cause massive quantum explosions at every containment site." Vexathal looked up from his logistical calculations. "And if the genetic locks release before the containment fields, we have 10 million hungry energy beings loose in the galaxy with no way to cure them." Marcus stared at the timing charts, his mind racing through possibilities. The precision required was beyond anything that had ever been attempted. They needed to coordinate signals across galactic distances with microsecond accuracy, compensating for relativistic effects, quantum foam interference, and the natural drift of space-time itself. It was impossible, which meant it was exactly the kind of problem Marcus specialized in. "What if we don't synchronize the signals?" he asked suddenly. Everyone turned to stare at him. "Explain," Ambassador Reschke said carefully. "We're thinking about this wrong. We're trying to send one signal to multiple points simultaneously. But what if we send multiple signals from multiple points all timed to arrive at the same destination at the same time?" Dr. Sarah Chen's eyes widened. "A convergent signal pattern. Use the communication network as a focusing lens rather than a transmission array." "Exactly. Instead of trying to synchronize 17 different artifact sites, we synchronize everything to converge on a single point, the galactic core, where the original predecessor control systems were located." Zefkil's form brightened with excitement. "The heart of Lox. Yes, that is where the primary control nexus was built. If the convergent signal pattern could reach that location, it would propagate instantly to all containment sites through the quantum entanglement network the predecessors built." Selwyn finished. Marcus, this could actually work. But Dr. Yilnith looked troubled. There's a problem. The galactic core is inside Nexari space, but it's also one of the most dangerous regions in the galaxy. High radiation, gravitational anomalies, and... She paused. And it's where the largest concentration of imprisoned beings is located. If something goes wrong, if we wake them up angry, then we'll have 10 million energy beings loose in the middle of the galaxy's most strategic location. Ambassador Reschke finished grimly. Marcus studied the star charts, calculating distances and travel times. How long to get a ship to the galactic core? Using standard hyperspace routes? 2 weeks minimum, Vexthal replied. We don't have 2 weeks. The lost ones around Kepler Station are getting restless again. Zefkiel can only keep them calm for so long. It was Sarah who provided the solution. The medical ship we arrived on has an experimental quantum tunnel drive. It's only been tested for short jumps, but theoretically, it could reach the galactic core in 3 days. Theoretically, Marcus repeated. Honestly, the odds of survival are not good, Sarah admitted. The drive system is unstable. The radiation levels at the core could kill anyone not properly shielded, and if the tunnel collapses while we're inside it... She spread her hands helplessly. Marcus looked around at the assembled beings who had become his unlikely team. So to summarize, we need to take an untested human ship with an experimental drive to the most dangerous place in the galaxy, arrive with perfect timing to receive signals from 17 different archaeological sites, and use that convergent pattern to reprogram the genetics of an entire species that's been locked away for 10 million years. That's about the size of it, Ambassador Reschke confirmed. And if we get any part of it wrong, we either kill everyone we're trying to save or release 10 million energy-hungry beings into the galaxy. Also accurate. Marcus grinned, feeling that familiar rush of excitement that came with impossible problems. Well, it wouldn't be the first time I've had to jury-rig a solution that shouldn't work. Zefkiel's presence radiated something that might have been laughter. I begin to understand why the galaxy speaks of human stubbornness as both a virtue and a curse. The question is, Marcus said, looking at each of them in turn, who's crazy enough to come with me? To his surprise, every hand in the room went up. The journey to the galactic core aboard the Earth Alliance medical ship Hippocrates was unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced. The quantum tunnel drive created a pathway through folded spacetime that allowed them to bypass normal physical laws, but the ride was terrifying. Reality seemed to twist around them, and more than once Marcus wondered if they would emerge on the other side as the same people who had entered. Their unlikely crew had grown during the 3-day journey. Zefkiel had used the quantum foam communication network to contact other sane members of its species, and 12 more had joined them through direct quantum transfer, a process that apparently allowed their energy-based forms to travel instantly across galactic distances. The ship now held representatives of 15 different species, all working toward a goal that seemed increasingly impossible with each passing hour. Quantum tunnel exit in 30 seconds, announced Captain Torres, Sarah's colleague who had volunteered to pilot the experimental vessel. All hands prepare for translation to normal space. The transition was violent. Marcus felt reality snap back into focus like a rubber band, accompanied by alarms throughout the ship as systems strained to compensate for the massive gravitational forces of the galactic core. Through the viewports, the sight was breathtaking and terrifying. The supermassive black hole at the galaxy's center dominated the view, surrounded by swirling accretion disks of matter being consumed at incredible speeds. Ancient predecessor structures orbited the black hole's event horizon, massive constructs that seemed to draw power directly from the spinning singularity. By the ancestors, Dr. Yilnith whispered. I've studied predecessor ruins for 30 years, but I never imagined anything like this. The structures were vast beyond comprehension, space stations the size of moons, connected by energy bridges that spanned thousands of kilometers. But what caught Marcus's attention were the darker shapes moving among them, vast organic forms that pulsed with malevolent energy. The first prisoners, Zefkiel explained, its form flickering with old pain. Those who were transformed earliest, kept closest to the heart of Lox as examples to the rest of us. They are no longer what they once were. How many? Vexthal asked, checking his weapon systems. Perhaps 1 million, but their power has grown over the eons of imprisonment. Each one is capable of destroying a fleet. Marcus studied the sensor readings, his engineer's mind analyzing the massive predecessor constructs. There, that structure at the center. It's the control nexus, isn't it? Yes. The heart of locks. All containment fields throughout the galaxy are controlled from that location. And it's surrounded by 1 million imprisoned energy beings who've gone completely insane, Ambassador Reschke observed. This just keeps getting better. Sarah looked up from her medical equipment where she had been preparing the genetic reversal serum that would be distributed through the quantum signal. Marcus, we need to get within 1,000 kilometers of the nexus for the signal to work properly. Any farther and the quantum interference from the black hole will disrupt the pattern. 1,000 kilometers, Captain Torres repeated, through a defensive perimeter of hostile energy beings, in an experimental medical ship with no weapons. Actually, Silwyn interjected, her biosensors working frantically, we do have weapons. We have them. She gestured toward the Zefkeel and the other sane members of its species who had joined them. Your energy beings, you can fight them on their own terms. Zefkeel's form solidified into something resembling combat armor. We can try, but we are few and they are many, and they have had 10 million years to grow hungry and mad. Marcus looked at the tactical situation, calculating distances and odds. It was hopeless by any rational measure, but rationality had never been humanity's strong suit. Zefkeel, how long do you need to reach the control nexus once we get close? If I can interface directly with the heart of locks, perhaps minutes. But the convergent signal must arrive precisely as I make contact or the entire system will overload. Marcus nodded, then activated the ship's communication system. This is Marcus Chen aboard the Hippocrates to all predecessor artifact sites. We are beginning our approach. Stand by for convergent signal transmission on my mark. 17 voices responded from across the galaxy, each confirming readiness. Dr. Yilneth had done remarkable work coordinating the timing calculations, accounting for relativistic effects and quantum interference. All right, people, Marcus announced to his mixed crew. We've jury-rigged solutions to impossible problems before. Time to do it one more time. The approach to the galactic core was a nightmare of dodging energy blasts and gravitational anomalies. The first prisoners attacked in waves, their forms blurring between matter and energy as they tried to destroy the ship. Zefkeel and its companions fought back, engaging in battles that took place across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Hull breach on Deck 3, Captain Torres reported as another energy blast struck home. Atmosphere contained, but we can't take much more of this. Marcus watched the distance counter tick down. 2,000 kilometers, 1,500. The battles raged around them. Impossible combats between beings of pure energy while the Hippocrates struggled to stay intact. 1,000 kilometers. Zefkeel, go, Marcus shouted. The ancient being phased through the ship's hull, racing toward the massive predecessor control station. Marcus watched through sensors as it fought its way through the defensive perimeter, its form blazing with power as it engaged the first prisoners directly. Signal convergence in 10 seconds, Dr. Yilneth announced. 9, 8, 7, on the view screen. Marcus could see Zefkeel reaching the control nexus, its energy form interfacing with systems that hadn't been touched in millions of years. 3, 2, 1. Mark. 17 signals perfectly timed and synchronized converged on the galactic core. The quantum pattern struck the heart of Locks just as Zefkeel made contact, and the effect was immediate and overwhelming. Light erupted from every predecessor structure throughout the galaxy. The containment fields that had held an entire species prisoner for 10 million years began to fail in sequence, but not catastrophically. Instead, the reversal signal propagated through the quantum entanglement network, reaching every imprisoned being simultaneously. Marcus watched in awe as the energy signatures of the first prisoners began to change. The chaotic, hungry patterns that had marked them as monsters started to stabilize, becoming complex and ordered once again. Across the galaxy, similar transformations were taking place as 10 million beings were freed not just from physical imprisonment, but from the genetic modifications that had made them into weapons. Zefkeel's voice reached them through the quantum foam, carrying exhaustion, but also joy. It is done. The locks are broken. The transformations are reversed. My people are free. But the most remarkable change was visible right before them. The first prisoners, who moments before had been mindless engines of destruction, were now floating peacefully around the predecessor structures. Their energy patterns had become beautiful, complex symphonies of light and power. One of them approached the Hippocrates, its form magnificent and terrible and somehow gentle. Young races, it spoke, its voice carrying the weight of eons. You have done what we could not do for ourselves. You have given us back our souls. Marcus felt tears on his cheeks that he hadn't realized were falling. What will you do now? What we were meant to do before the Keepers found us, the ancient being replied. We will heal the wounds in space-time. We will tend the young civilizations that are growing among the stars. We will remember what we learned in the darkness and ensure it never happens again. The journey back to Kepler Station took weeks using conventional hyperdrive, but Marcus didn't mind. He spent the time talking with Zefkiel and the others, learning about their species' true nature and their plans for the future. When they finally arrived at the workshop, Marcus found it transformed. Word of what had happened at the Galactic Core had spread, and the facility was now the unofficial embassy for dozens of species. The Galactic Council had formally recognized the workshop as a center for interspecies cooperation, and Marcus's engineering license had been not just restored but elevated to a level that didn't previously exist. But the greatest change was in how people looked at him. No longer was he the disgraced human mechanic who jury-rigged solutions to impossible problems. Now he was the engineer who had freed an ancient species and prevented a galactic war. Standing in his workshop, surrounded by beings from across the galaxy working together on projects that would have been unimaginable just months before, Marcus reflected on how far he had come. It had started with a crying alien hatchling and a simple desire to fix something that was broken. Now, somehow he had helped fix something that had been broken for 10 million years. Kethvar approached him, carrying his now-grown child who had become a symbol of hope for the workshop. Marcus, the Veltar said formally, the collective has asked me to present you with something. He handed Marcus a small crystal pendant, its surface carved with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and change as he watched. What is it? A gift from Zefkiel's people. They call it a Heart of Harmony. It will allow you to communicate directly with them through the quantum foam.